Hey, what's going on, guys? Steve here with Geek Boulevard, back with another film review. This week I'm going to be reviewing The Crow, starring Bill Skarsgård. And now that I've sat with the movie, I saw it yesterday, kind of stewed over it for a bit, so I'm ready to give my full thoughts and score on this reinterpretation of the Crow franchise. My voice is a little hoarse right now. I'm a little under the weather due to my allergies kind of kicking my ass, but we're going to get through this as best we can. The Crow is directed by Rupert Sanders. It is rated R with a runtime of 1 hour and 51 minutes. Soulmates Eric Draven and Shelley Webster are brutally murdered when the demons of her dark past catch up with them. Given the chance to save his true love by sacrificing himself, Draven returns to seek bloody revenge against the killers, traversing the worlds of the living and the dead to put the wrong things right. Now, ever since this movie was announced years ago, it has garnered nothing but hate for it. I mean, Jason Momoa was attached to it at one point, which would have been really cool to see. I really would like to see what a Jason Momoa-led Crow movie would have looked like. That would have just been awesome. But then we heard that Bill Skarsgård was actually going to be playing the Crow, and I love Bill Skarsgård as an actor. I think he's a great performer, and I was immediately on board with the fact that he was going to be in this. Then the first image of Bill as Eric was released, and man, the internet was just in an uproar. And the comparisons with the 1994 original were just impossible to ignore at that point. I have watched the original in preparation of this one, so I will be comparing the two quite a bit. I have not read the comics, so my opinion is solely going to be based on this film and the original film. I will say, first and foremost, that I did enjoy the chemistry between Skarsgård and FKA Twigs and the fleshed out relationship that Eric and Shelley had in this version of it. They're both pretty broken people in their own ways, and seeing that unfold as they grow closer, I actually kind of enjoyed that. In the original, that was almost non-existent, and you only got hints of their relationship in flashbacks, which is one of the drawbacks of the original that I think could have been fleshed out more. It was fine, but I was definitely happy to see it further explored in this version. As for Skarsgård's performance, I think he did fine with the material. I do like him as an actor, as I said. I think he's done some really great roles in the past, like Pennywise and It, and his role in John Wick Chapter 4. But as for the character of Eric, I can't help but think of Brandon Lee and go, well, Lee did it better. Eric in this version is much more melancholic. He's a lot more darker than Lee's Eric was. I'm assuming it's because they were reinterpreting the character from the comics and not so much from, the 1994 original. But since I only saw the original, I only have that to go off of. And Lee would throw in a one-liner here and there in the original film, which seems like something that wouldn't really work, but it did. Every time that he was on screen, I was just locked in the whole time. Skarsgård's version is just this unfunny, moody person, and I just found it very hard to kind of remove myself from that comparison and treat this as like its own thing. It also takes quite a while for Eric to kind of embrace his new identity as the Crow. He really doesn't fully come into the mantle until the final act when he goes to the Opera House. Now, the Opera House sequence, I actually really enjoyed the choreography in that scene. It's a very long sequence too, and easily the most violent sequence in the movie for sure. And speaking of violence, I want to talk about the violence in this movie. It was very overtly used, and it never really felt justified. It felt as if they just added in all this gore for the sake of it. The logic seems to be, well, okay, Eric can't die, let's put him in some fucked up situations to show some blood and gore. And a lot of those scenes felt like they only existed to show those moments, like they were purely created just to show those types of situations. The original film, while still being R-rated, still being a violent movie with a lot of its dark undertones, it never took the violence to that extreme. A lot of the violence was pretty toned down for a film of that caliber, which kind of blew my mind, really. And I feel like all of these comparisons to the original film, I feel that the director, Rupert Sanders, really put himself into a bad position by naming the character Eric Draven. We know that the Crow does have different people that take the mantle. So if they had changed the names, it probably wouldn't have garnered such a bad reputation from the start if the character wasn't Eric Draven. There's one more positive thing that I want to say about this version, is that Danny Huston is in this film. He does a pretty fantastic job playing the villain, Vincent Rogue, who is this very powerful person who has eternal life due to his ability to corrupt good people, to bring the darkness out of them, and then they do all these bad things and they curse them to hell. He does this in exchange for eternal life, and so he's been alive for centuries, and the way that he would say that about his character in the film, you do kind of feel that. And I thought his performance was good, and that's mostly because of the actor playing him, and that's Danny Huston. Danny Huston is just a great actor, and if anyone else was cast in this role, he would have been a very forgettable villain, and I wouldn't care as much. So props to Danny Huston for doing the best he could. And the way that this film ended, it leaves it open-ended to maybe do a sequel down the road, but that's obviously not going to happen. While the 1994 film told a very singular story, it had a definitive ending. Eric Draven comes back, he gets revenge on the people that murdered him and his loved one. He succeeds in that, and then he finally can rest. And that's how the movie ends. It tells a very singular story. This, I don't know why they went with this ending. It just didn't make sense to me, especially with all the negative stuff surrounding it. There's never going to be a sequel, so I don't understand why they felt they needed to end it with that. So to sum up my thoughts, my final score for The Crow is going to be a 2 out of 5. I think Bill's performance as Eric was fine, and I actually liked the romance between Eric and Shelley being explored more. And Danny Huston was pretty cool to see as the villain of the film. Also, the sequence in the Opera House was very well choreographed. But the overt use of gore and violence without any sort of justification behind it, and the fact that it took until the final act of the movie for the Crow to actually make an appearance, didn't really feel earned to me. Do yourself a favor, watch the original. It is a far better film. Yeah, the dialogue can be a little over the top at times, but the cinematography is great, the soundtrack is good in that film. It's a classic for a reason, and I definitely think it's a much better version of the two when you put them together. This retelling, remake, whatever you want to call it, it just felt completely unnecessary. But now I want to know what you guys thought of this version of The Crow. Have you seen it yet? How does it hold up for you compared to the original? And speaking of the original, what was your experience watching that one for the first time? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and don't forget, if you like this video, to click the thumbs up button, hit subscribe, and tick the bell so you can always be notified when my next review or reaction drops. Thank you for watching, guys, and until next time, keep it classy and keep it geeky.
You have no idea what hell awaits you. No, I do.
How many people have you loved?
I'll never be alone.